All right, welcome to the first episode of The Turnover. I'm Robbie.
And I'm Josh.
And today we're going to be breaking down this weekend's conference championship games. All right, well, let's move on to the Power 5 conference championships. Let's go ahead and start with the ACC. Miami and Clemson have not played this year, so what are your thoughts on that game?
I'm going to pick Miami. I think they're going to upset Clemson and win. Now, I know they've been struggling. I know Clemson has been dominant on defense in November, one of the best units in the nation. But here's the stat that I think is important. Miami has never won an ACC championship. Clemson has 16. I think Miami, coming off a bad loss from Pitt, just wants to win a lot more than Clemson does. And that's why I'm going to pick the turnover gain to win the ACC.
I'm actually going to agree with you on that pick. I have Miami also winning. Let's look at the losses for both teams. Clemson lost at Syracuse. Miami lost at Pitt, and Pitt had a freshman quarterback that game. But Miami they didn't have much to play for last week. You look at that. They still finished 11-1 on the season.
If they win next week, they're still going to the college football playoff regardless.
Exactly. So they didn't really have anything to play for last week. They just kind of showed up and were there. Meanwhile, this team this week has so much to play for. Like you said, a spot in the playoff. Because there's no way a one-loss ACC champion with a win over Clemson is getting left out of the playoff. And then ACC championship obviously is on the line as well. Miami's gonna have to limit what Kelly Bryant is able to do on the ground because they're gonna have to make Kelly Bryant beat him throwing the ball. Kelly Bryant has been an efficient passer this year, but he's not gonna win many games with his arm. They're gonna win games because they're able to make big plays on offense with Kelly Bryant's legs, and their defense, like you said, just been tremendous with Brent Venables at the helm as their defense coordinator. But I really like Miami to show up. I like them to force some turnovers, get in Kelly Bryant's head. The turnover chain, I think, will make a few appearances, so I am picking Miami in this one. All right, so next we have the 11:30 game on Saturday. We got TCU versus Oklahoma. Oklahoma won 38-20 back in mid-November. Josh, what are your thoughts on this one?
2 words. Baker Mayfield. He's going to be the difference maker in this game. I have OU beating TCU again. I feel like it could be a close game, but I don't think TCU is going to play good enough defense to keep this offense from scoring enough points to win this game. I feel like TCU is going to put up a lot of points against this Oklahoma defense, but at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield is going to score more.
You said your 2 words are Baker Mayfield for this game. My 2 words are actually Rodney Anderson for this game. Oklahoma's running back has been stellar these past 6 weeks. He has 1,041 yards from scrimmage, which is first among all Power 5 players, and he has 14 touchdowns these past 6 weeks, which is second nationally. Rodney Anderson has been such a tremendous addition. He is a sophomore after he got a medical redshirt because his first 2 seasons with Oklahoma, he had a neck injury and a leg injury that sidelined him all year. He's only played in one game before this year, but he's just done so fantastic for Oklahoma. He scored 4 touchdowns in the first half against TCU a couple weeks ago, 2 rushing, 2 receiving, and then he scored 4 touchdowns again in a half against West Virginia. He's just been so tremendous. He hasn't really played second half so much with Baker Mayfield, or those numbers would be a lot higher. And let's see, back in November in their matchup, Oklahoma started 3 true freshmen in its secondary against Kenny Hill, 2 cornerbacks, 1 safety, true freshmen, and 4 true freshmen on the defense. This is a very young team, but they still held Kenny Hill to only 49% passing, his lowest on the year. Oklahoma's defense has been much improved the past 3 weeks. Obviously, West Virginia without Will Greer, Kansas, and against TCU, but they're not really allowing as many big plays as they did early in the season. They're wrapping up and tackling better. But TCU still has one of the top defenses in the country, allowing still less than 16 points per game, even after giving up 38 to Oklahoma. So TCU is going to have a big chip on their shoulder this weekend. Baker Mayfield obviously has a chip on his shoulder week in, week out. But I expect TCU's defense to show up and play much better than they did that first game. People say that TCU gave up 0 points that second half, but Lincoln Riley called the game so much differently in the second half because he knew that he'd probably be playing TCU again in the Big 12 championship. Didn't want to give him, more film to watch. But I think Baker Mayfield, best college football player. He's going to lead Oklahoma to their 3rd straight Big 12 title, college football playoff for the 2nd time in 3 years, and hopefully, Heisman for the first time. So I'm picking Oklahoma. I think it's going to be a lot closer of a game than it was a few weeks ago back in Norman. So I'm thinking Oklahoma by probably one score, but I am picking Oklahoma in this one. All right, so next we are looking at Wisconsin versus Ohio State.
My pick for this game, I am picking the undefeated Badgers. I'm going to pick Wisconsin just because looking at that Iowa game, JT Barrett is inconsistent. I feel like the Badgers defense is going to prove too much for that offense and it's going to shut them down. You cannot run against this Wisconsin defense. It's not going to work. They can't rely on Dobbins. They're going to have to rely on the arm of JT Barrett. And when teams do that, he does not perform well at all. I just don't think he's going to have a very good game. And they need him to have a great game in order to beat Wisconsin. Now, I feel like Ohio State's front seven on defense, one of the best in the nation. I feel like Jonathan Taylor will not have an amazing game, but he's also probably one of the best, if not the best, running back in the entire nation. It's going to be hard to stop him, but if there's one team that can do it, it's going to be Ohio State. But I just don't feel like it's going to be enough to account for Barrett's lack of production in the game. So I'm going to pick Wisconsin.
See, I disagree with you on this one because I'm picking Ohio State, and you talked about JT Barrett being inconsistent. I mean, Wisconsin at quarterback has Alex Hornibrook. Alex Hornibrook, I mean, he's done a good job this year. He hasn't been great, but he hasn't needed to be great. But I think that Ohio State is going to get out on top early. I think they're going to get some stops with their front seven. You know, they're going to be fresh coming into this one. Jonathan Taylor's not really going to have the opportunity to wear him down as much to start the game. So then I think Ohio State's going to jump out early, get on top, and then, I mean, I'm not going to trust Alex Hornibrook's arm to keep the Wisconsin Badgers in this game. Last week was the first time since the third week of the college season that he did not throw an interception. I mean, he's too big of a liability at the quarterback spot. You know, I mean, like you said, it really does depend which JT Barrett is going to show up. Are we going to have a JT Barrett that played against Iowa throwing 4 interceptions? Or are we going to have JT Barrett the next weekend against Michigan State where they won by, 45 plus? But ultimately, it's tough to pick against Urban Meyer. Conference championship game, potential playoff spot on the line still for Ohio State. Coming in ranked number 8, they're still very well in the playoff contention. Going to need a little bit of help though. But I'm picking Ohio State. All right, so next we have the Friday night game, Pac-12, Stanford versus USC. Who do you have in that one?
This game is not very exciting for me. There's a reason why they're playing on Friday night with all the high school players. To me, there's not really much to play for here rather than a BCS New Year's Six bowl game. But I'm still going to pick Stanford, and that's because it's going to come down to 2 players, Sam Darnold and Bryce Love. Darnold has been hit or miss this year, had a terrible first half of the season, but he's done very well these past couple weeks, and I think they can keep USC in the game. But Bryce Love has been consistently great, and that's a reason why he's going to be top 3 in the Heisman pick. That's why I'm going to pick Stanford, just because I feel like Bryce Love's going to win the game for them, and Sam Darnold won't be able to keep up with his efficiency.
All right, so this game, the 2 teams, to me, is not that intriguing. But I think the player matchup is intriguing of Bryce Love versus Sam Darnold. Bryce Love, current Heisman hopeful. Sam Darnold was the guy to win the Heisman coming into this season. Obviously had very disappointing season, but he was number 1 at the beginning.
I thought it was interesting. Everyone thought Sam Darnold was going to lead USC to a national championship this year potentially, and it just isn't going to pan out. There's no way they're going to make it.
People also thought Florida State was the 3rd pick to win the national championship. Look how they ended up this year.
6-6.
Hopefully, they still have a game this weekend. But here's my thing with USC is that Sam Darnold is just a turnover machine. 12 interceptions this year in 12 games, 9 fumbles on the year. He's pretty much given the ball up almost twice a game to the other team. As good as Sam Darnold's arm is, his head he just does not make the right plays. He's not made winning plays this season. Like you said, Bryce Love, terrific player, terrific athlete, one of the best running backs in the country. Had a decent game against Notre Dame, 120 yards, which, that's decent for
against a very good Notre Dame team.
That's decent for what he's done all season. The USC won 42-24 at home back in September, but that was when USC was a lot more intimidating. They had as a team, they had a strong start to the season, but like you said, Sam Darnold was less than perfect. But, I think Stanford today is a much better team than USC. I think Stanford's a much better team than the Stanford team back in September. I think Bryce Love has developed nicely all year, week in, week out. Only had one minor ankle injury that kind of held him back this year. But overall, I think Bryce Love just has a big game. I'm picking Stanford in a close game, which should be an interesting Friday night out there. All right, so finally we have the SEC Championship. This week you are looking at Georgia versus Auburn, where Auburn opens as a 2.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Auburn. They're motivated. They think they're one of the best, if not the best team in the nation. And on Saturday, we're going to find out how good they actually are. They played Georgia once. I think they kind of caught Georgia off guard by how good they were. Beat them, I believe it was like 40-17. I don't think it's going to be that close this time. I think it's going to be very similar to that Alabama game where you kind of have to watch the game into the fourth quarter to see who's going to win. But this Auburn team has been very good the past couple weeks. They beat two number one teams. That's incredible. And I feel like they're going to keep that streak going and win against their, I believe it's their third top 10 team this season.
All right, well, I'm also going to go ahead. I'm picking Auburn in this one. They're arguably playing the best football in the country as of late. And the thing is a quarterback spot. You have Jarrett Stidham versus Jacob Fromm. You know, Jacob Fromm looked pretty rattled in that game against Auburn, completed less than 50% of his passes. I expect him to have a better game this weekend. But, Kerryon Johnson had that kind of awkward injury in the Alabama game. He has been upgraded to probable for the SEC Championship, which means that he's going to play. And he's been so tremendous for this Auburn team this year. Gus Malzahn done a great job with them. But Georgia, they arguably still have one of the best running games in the country with Nick Chubb, Sony Michael, and DeAndre Swift. But Jarrett Stidham he's been playing too well as of late. He already beat this Georgia team once. He knows he can do it again. He's played pretty well in their big games so far this year, with the exception of Clemson, where he got sacked 7 times. So, as much as you can do being sacked 7 times. But I expect Auburn to get up early. I don't think Georgia's going to be able to rely on Jacob Fromm's arm to bring him back in it. So I am going to go ahead and go with Auburn for this one. All right, so that pretty much sums up all the championship games that are happening this weekend. Josh, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
So Friday nights might have ended for a lot of states last week, but we have one more Friday night game that's going to be just as exciting as all those high school games, and that's going to be the Pac-12 championship.